Hey guys, welcome to MuseThemes.com. This is Ashton. Today I'm super excited to share with you our new Mailchimp email signups widget. It's a very simple way to integrate a newsletter signup function onto your Muse site using Mailchimp. If you don't know what Mailchimp is, it's a very popular email marketing service where you can build large-scale email databases and send out bulk emails and newsletters. Once you have an account with Mailchimp, you can incorporate this widget onto your Muse site and allow your users to subscribe to your email list all without ever leaving your webpage. This widget can be placed on any existing site or new builds and was designed to work great for longtime users of Mailchimp and new users alike. And what's really cool is you can design the sign-up form to be just a simple single field entry with just an email address and a submit button, or it can also include the first and last name fields as well. Email lists are a fundamental marketing tool and one of the most powerful tools available to increase awareness of your business. And it's also a great way to just keep your followers up to date as well. So let's get started and we'll jump right into Muse. I'm just going to be using a blank site for the purposes of testing the widget, but remember this widget can be easily incorporated into any pre-existing site that you may have. Now let's drag the widget out onto the page. And the widget space will likely populate with a preview of the form, but we'll need to preview it in a browser to see the full functionality, but we'll get to that in a little bit. First, it's important to note here that the sizing and positioning of this widget itself is representative of its browser appearance, so make sure you place this exactly where you want it on your site. Now let's open the settings panel. First and foremost, the key thing we need here is our Mailchimp form URL, and we're going to get that from the Mailchimp portal, which I'm going to show you right now. Now you can either type Mailchimp.com into your browser URL, or click this handy little link included here at the bottom of the settings panel, and you'll be taken directly to the Mailchimp website. Now from here you can create a new account if you've never worked with Mailchimp before, but if you have, you can simply log in here. I'm just going to type my username and password, and we'll click Login. Perfect. Now once you're inside your account, you're going to want to click Lists here on your top toolbar. Now many of you may have some pre-existing lists created already, like I do here. I've created a sample one just for the sake of this video. But if you've never used Mailchimp before, or you just want to create a new list to start fresh, you'll simply need to click Create List here. And it'll ask you for a few bits of info, and then you'll have your list displayed here right away and ready to go. So once you've created your list, we need to get our URL like we saw in the settings panel. So we're just going to click into our list, and then up here we're going to click Sign Up Forms. And then you'll want to go to this Embedded Forms section here, and we'll click Select. And here we are. Now there's a very specific piece of information you need to grab from this section down here where it says copy paste onto your site. Now do not copy and paste this entire thing. That would only apply if you just wanted a direct embed onto a website, but for the use of our widget and all customization options that come with it, you're going to want to scroll down in this chunk just a little bit to where you see Form Action. Right after action, you'll see a URL in quotes. That's exactly what you want. So we're going to select this and be very careful not to include the actual quotes or anything before or after them. And there. Now this may happen to you just like it did for me. Sometimes your browser may automatically select the entirety of this code when you let go of your mouse, which obviously we don't want. So a quick little trick. First, I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page because sometimes it doesn't relinquish that selection otherwise. Now let me find that chunk again. And as I select it with my cursor and holding my cursor down, I'm actually going to hit Command-C or Control-C on a PC before releasing my finger on the mouse. And then once I do release my finger, it still auto-selects everything, but I've already copied what I need, so I'm good to go. Also, too, there's this little tool on the bottom right corner of this code space that allows you to drag the space bigger. By default, the URL we need is just out of view, so this is just a little helpful tool to access it easier. Now I've copied my URL already, but there's one more thing here that I want to point out. I'm going to click over to Settings, And we're going to select the first option for list name and defaults. There's an option here on this page that you have for every form you create called Enable Double Opt-in. Now by default this won't be selected, which means when a user fills out your form on their site, they'll be automatically added to your list without any further action needed. However, if you enable this, the user will receive a confirmation email that they must verify in order to be added to your mailing list. And you can see that if I select this option, it automatically selects the Enable reCAPTCHA option as well. But that isn't necessarily mandatory. I would just need to deselect this, just like that. So just keep that in mind. But for now, we're just going to disable this option completely. So now let's jump back into Muse. We're going to pop open that settings panel. And we'll hit Command V or Control V to paste our URL in the field. Perfect. And below this, we have two options we can toggle on and off. First is Enable First and Last Name. So as you can see, by default, we're set up with only an email address field, but we can add the space for names as well by selecting it here. And when I do that, it updates our preview here too, which is really helpful. Also, the option to enable labels, which is on by default. Labels are the text you see above the form field itself, not to be confused with the pre-filled text inside the field. And if we choose, we can disable this, just like that, which is also reflected in our widget box. But we're going to leave those enabled for now so we can play with the styling. Now keep in mind, although my Muse canvas here is updating the preview nicely, this might not necessarily always happen, depending on a variety of factors. But regardless of what you're seeing on the canvas here, it's a browser preview that you'll need to get a more accurate depiction of what's actually happening. So if the settings aren't being reflected or if you're seeing nothing at all, don't worry, just give it a browser preview and you'll be good to go. So let's jump into our label styling settings. Each field gives you the option to customize the text itself, as well as fonts and color. I could change any of these that I want. For instance, I could put enter before email address if I choose, just as an example. Now the font and color styling here, remember it's only controlling the text above the field since we're in label settings. And keep in mind, as with all widgets with font entries, you need to include a sample of your font on the page somewhere so it's exported to the browser properly. And we'll go ahead and jump down to input styling. This now being what controls the text inside the fields. Now I'm not going to explore all of these individually, but there are a lot of options here covering font, padding, and color of both the text in the field as well as the background space behind the text in the field. Let's jump into button styling. Like before, you can customize what the text says here in this first field, followed by numerous styling options of color, size, etc. for the button, the text, the background space around the text, as well as the button border. So lots to play with here. And last but not least, let's jump into the pop-up setup. This controls what you see in a pop-up once an entry gets placed. And you can customize the text to say whatever you want. The first two lines will be what's seen for a confirmation, which is a header and some body text. And a third field to customize text in the case of an error pop-up, which only occurs when someone tries to sign up twice with the same email address. And finally, some color styling available in the pop-up as well, which is cool. Now I do also want to note, I had mentioned before about that double opt-in feature that you can enable inside Mailchimp. It's a good idea to customize your pop-up text here dependent on whether or not you have that double opt-in enabled. So for example, if you don't have the double opt-in set up, you may want your pop-up to say something like, "You've been added to the list." But if you do have it enabled, you may want it to say something like, "Check your email for a confirmation." Now I didn't opt to enable it, so I'm going to enter "You're all set" in the field. And this here, "You've been added to the list," that works great. And one final thing I want to mention here about the error pop-up. When you get an error pop-up, there's a link on there to update your profile. Well, that link has a different text color state when the link has been visited previously. Now, this previously visited link color is not in the widget options because it falls under general link styles in Muse. So if that comes up, all you need to do is update your default link styles, which you can do by clicking Hyperlinks on your top toolbar. And inside there, click Edit Link Styles. and you can make changes to all of the link styles at the various states. So before we wrap up in Muse, let's give this a browser preview. And there we go. Now let's give the sign up a try. Sometimes it's a good idea to do a site publish instead of doing this in a preview, so if you have any functionality issue, try giving the site a publish to properly test. But a preview should work okay in most cases. So I'm just going to enter an email address, and we'll get in my first and last name. And we'll click subscribe. Perfect. And we get our pop-up just like that, and everything looks ship-shape. So really quick before we close out, let's jump back to the Mailchimp website and take a look. I'm going to click Lists. And here we can already see one subscriber added to my list. Now keep in mind, sometimes the addition isn't instantaneous. It could sometimes take up to 24 hours. And if you have the double opt-in enabled, it won't be added until the user verifies the confirmation email. But I can click right into my list now, and our email address has already been added. So that's our Mailchimp email sign-up widget. Thanks so much for watching, guys. There's lots of customization available here, especially on the Mailchimp website. It's full of features, and you can even have separate instances of the widget tied to different mailing lists. So I definitely encourage you to poke around a little bit and explore the capabilities. Thanks again, and if you run into any trouble, don't hesitate to let us know in support. Cheers.